guys, Pat here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. Today I am going to install a set of battery jumper cables for my Volvo ECR88 2013 model. And just recently, or just yesterday, fixed my ground problem. The machine was starting really sluggish, real slow, almost to the point where it wouldn't, I was afraid it wasn't going to start every time I tried to start it up. So in researching and troubleshooting, I found that it had a bad jumper cable between the switch and the negative side on the battery. So I actually put in a larger jumper cable than was required. While I got this panel off, I want to put the switch in here like I'd meant to do for a while back. So what I have here is some 4-gauge battery cable and a switch. I like these little switches because there's not a whole lot of chance of this coming into contact with ground and shorting something out. I have one of these on my 10-yard dump truck. I have one of these on my 5-yard dump truck, and what those are for is so I can hook up a winch to the back of the truck. I've moved 3 shipping containers so far, 2 for ourselves and then 1 for a friend, and I needed that winch to pull that shipping container onto the truck. A little unconventional, or not a professional shipping container mover, but it works. So these little switches are kind of cool because both sides are exactly the same. You can use these interchangeably, so they go together. There's no question. I could take this end or this end and hook it to the back of each one of the dump trucks and be able to jump this, or you know, if I've got a long enough run to do that. That's something I got to think about too, is options there too. I could have one long cable that has 2 of these and then just link everything together and have it start that way. Haven't thought that far through. What my idea at first was just to buy a set of jumper cables, cut one end off, and then put one of these on that end, and then I could just hook this to the machine and then hook the other side to battery posts on the truck, dump truck or whatever. So the first thing I'll do is I'll run these in through where they're going to go, and so I can get a length, a good proper length. I think I'll just leave them full length. There's plenty of room back here behind this, so I can roll this back up in there and then pull it out, and I'll have this much hanging out of the panel, and so that should give me a lot of room to hook this to a set of jumper cables in the future. Hopefully I'll never have to use it, but in the case I do. And of course today I have my helper here. He's on patrol looking for bugs and such, and rats and deer and whatever else he can chase. Anything that walks, crawls, or tries, huh, Cody? You're after it. We'll go ahead and take all this over to the shop, or the box truck. Out here at this piece of property, we're off grid. We don't have any power, but I've got a little box truck put together that's got tools and whatnot in it, and a vise, and so we'll go over there, a little more controlled environment, and get started on making these up. Some of this stuff in here is not the right size. These ring terminals are for a 1/0 cable with a 5/16 inch opening. And what I have here is a 4-gauge cable. Now this is as big a wire as you're going to find in quite a few of your jumper cables, actually. You got a lot of sheathing and just a little bit of wire in most of those jumper cables. As a matter of fact, I have a set here that are very thin, but they work for most applications. The other thing that you have to pay attention to is this is 100% copper. And a lot of your jumper cables are made out of copper coated aluminum. And copper is always better than aluminum for conductivity and carrying current. I have number 4 crimping blocks, hydraulic crimping tool, 2 pieces of shrink tubing to go over my ends. I have this connector, and before I fool around with this connector, I got to take and remove this pin out of this side of the connector. You can see what the pin's shaped like. It's got a little hook on this end. It's got a little hook here, and this is the side that actually slides over the other connector. This from the other side is going to press inside here and make contact with this other connector. In order to get that out of there, see this flat tab? You have to. It's kind of a spring-loaded deal, and you got to press that down in order to make this connector slip out of there. So we'll attempt to do that on camera. There we go. I just push down on a flat tab. You can see it better on this side. A flat tab. Push down on it, and then that terminal will fall out to that point, and then you can just hopefully push it out. Yep, there it goes. All right, so we got these two out of their home. Now the way I measure that, I just go up to the flange and then cut that back. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this back a little further because I got my grubby little fingers all over it. Cut just a little bit of the sheathing off with it so I don't make a big mess. I have little tiny wires all over the place if I don't have something to hold them together with. I'll come back and mark that with my fingernail. Trying not to cut my wire. Did pretty good on that one. And then what I'll do is try not to handle this too much with my grubby little hands. This is just soldering flux. I'll heat up this wire just a little bit. You know, the warm wire will penetrate into that flux. I was hoping not to touch this with my hands, but here we go. We got to touch it. I get the same twist on there. There we go. So that way the connector comes right up to the sheathing. Okay, I went ahead and put the wire in the vise over there so I can have a third hand here. And we'll put these crimping blocks in place. That's how that goes together. Crimp close to the back side of this so I don't push the wire out when I go to crimp it. You'll want to squirt it out the back side if I crimp too close to the front. Now we got a bite. Now I got to keep this press favoring or pushing back against the wire so it don't slip off of there. See if I can melt some solder inside that crimp. I'll heat from this side back this way so the wires, this sheathing and stuff is the last to get hot, but I just want it just hot enough to melt solder inside of the joint there. Had to get that pretty hot for it to fill up. Now we'll let that set up while I'm crimping the black side. Okay, I got that wire nice and hot so it could melt that solder flux. Oh, that side went on a lot better. Alright, wiggle that around. Sheathing's up close to the fitting. This side should be cool enough because you don't ever want to move a fitting with the solder still wet, or you'll make a cold solder joint. You don't want that. Tighten up that little knob there. Jack it up a little bit to where you can just get the barrel on there, or the fitting. Now that it's holding on to the fitting, I'm pressing against the wire again. Now the other thing I ought to mention too, because this is the wrong size, right size wire for the crimp, wrong size barrel for the crimping tool. So you're going to have extra material that actually spreading out the side here a little bit, and so actually the crimp is not crimping down as much as you might. You know, it's leaving just a little bit of gap in there, but that's only what, a 1/16 of an inch maybe, but the wire is actually really in there solid. It might not, you might not think so, it might not look like it, but it's on there. But just a little bit of insurance here. I'm going to heat this up and pour the solder in. That solder flux is what's actually melting. It's not this silicone or rubber. You'd think this stuff here just catch on fire. Some sheathing will, but this stuff won't. Anyway, I'm going to leave that alone, let that cool off. This one here is very warm still, but I can touch it. So what I'm going to do is I'll make up the other ends, and I know that this lead on the battery is 11 inches shorter than the leads from here. The solder, when it starts to solidify, it'll turn from glossy to matte finish. This will be about 11 inches shorter. That's around about 11 inches. And I will run this out to where these are going to be parallel. Now I know the difference between these two have to actually be parallel, but I'm making measurements to cut this off. So either way, the black wire has to be a little bit shorter than the red wire to have these hang straight together. So we'll cut a lead off of this black wire. The red lead should be longer than the black lead, and it is, so we'll cut that off right there. But while that's continuing to cool, I'm going to go ahead and drill these out to 3/8. Three-eighths is the size of the jaws on the lug on the battery. Now that worked out a lot smoother, just going a little slower. Generally that's how I operate, but you guys have me under pressure on the camera here. Alright, those are the same size ring terminals that were on the lugs that went to the battery on that old connector. You can see how that came apart there. They soldered it, didn't crimp it. Now I can take these and clean these up, melt the solder out, and these will still be good to use. These are solid copper terminal ends, so I'm going to go ahead and keep those. Now this will be interesting, because this is, like I said, this is for 1/0, but I'm crimping to a 2-inch wire, number 4 wire. So we'll go ahead and slip our shrink tubing on there. Put it way back so it don't melt before it's time, because we have to solder this, let it cool, and then bring that shrink tubing back up here. If you bring it back up too soon, just the heat of the cable and the connector will shrink the tube before it's time. And you guys are probably, the guys that know better, probably saying, "Well, Pat, it's about time you did that." It's kind of a no-brainer, but sometimes it works better to do it the other way. Sometimes it works better to do it this way. I got plenty of room in that barrel, or in that terminal. Starting to flatten out just a little bit, so now it's got a good hold on it. And I like to keep it to where when it crimps down, the little butterflies coming off, or the wings coming off of the ends or sides of the fitting are the same plane as this spade here, or whatever you want to call it, this flat spot. Okay, let's see how that turned out. Okay, that's on there. That is not going anywhere. So I'll heat this up now and put solder in it. It's still hot, but the solder's set up. So these are labeled speaking of hot and cold, positive and negative. And so the little hook side has to be face down so that little tab there can connect to that hook. So again, the plus side is red. That fastens right into place. It's a good solid connection. Again with the minus side, negative side, that hooks right into place. So this side's ready to go. Now they also make these that you can bolt this right to a chassis or whatever like that, and that's how I got it on a dump truck. The 10-yard truck has this actually fastened to the frame, and so when I go to plug in the pigtail on the 15,000-pound winch that I have for that, it just snaps right into place and I got power. Okay, so I found some alcohol, and what alcohol is good for is cleaning off these connectors, clean the slag or whatever off of the terminal due to the cleaning of the, with the soldering flux. And I can also put some antioxidant right here at the connection. Smear it all around. It ain't pretty. It's kind of messy, but it's good stuff. Keeps things from oxidizing. Now we'll see if I don't think this is going to fit, to be honest with you. Nope, it's not. So I'll slip that back off of the other side. I should have done that before I put this together. I was trying to multitask and it didn't work out too well. And this is some really big shrink tubing. This is the same stuff that I used on that ground for the excavator. And it's got the adhesive stuff on the inside of it. I know it's going to shrink up to part of this, but maybe not all of it. We're going to find out though. That worked out remarkably well. I was surprised. Okay, now this one here, I'll clean this up here with the little bit of alcohol. See, that alcohol takes that right off of there. Does a pretty good job. Yeah, that heat shrink tubing does really well. It shrank up nicely on that 4-gauge wire. Now the thing that a lot of guys will do is they'll check for continuity. So we'll set the multimeter on ohms. Okay, we have 0, which is where we want to be. I'm going to go to the black side, black lead. We got 0. We have continuity there. Let's see if we got continuity on the other side. Okay, I got 0 there. And guess what? You guys probably recognize this already. I forgot to put antioxidant on this side. What are you doing, Cody? Hey, what's going on? You gonna help me or what? You're just gonna walk away. See how it is? Well, part of me wants to put a sleeve over top of this, and part of me says I don't need it. Well, one guy will say, oh, you need that stuff, and another guy will say, oh, you don't need that stuff. I used to go from the cable batteries to where it comes through here. This is going to be about 11 inches longer. Okay, the 14mm wrench. I want to hook up my ground first. It's kind of one of those preventative maintenance things. You hope you never have to use it, but it's be really handy if you had to have a jump. I got plenty of antioxidant on the battery terminals and on these lugs. Okay, now the hot side. Take a little of that out of there, but not so much to where it's binding. It's going to look really good. Making sure I'm not touching any ground with this wrench here. Might get the light show. Now, you'll want to come all the way out of there with this. It's not hurting anything if I put it on there. Stuff's a little bit of a pain in the hind end, but it's really nice to use if you're concerned about the vibration. After a while, vibration will chafe through wire, and you'd rather it chafe through this stuff than the wire. And you could take black tape and tape these, or you can take zip ties. Definitely do the ends and a few places in between so the wire don't pop out of there at some point. Black tape's wonderful because it can kind of pinch the end here a little bit. Keep that a little bit sanitized. Try to keep all the kinks out of my turns. Not doing too bad of a job so far. Helps when you keep this tight. You just put the cap on. We are good to go. I'll wrap this up. See if that shroud goes on there, or that panel. Now that we're putting the panel on, I make sure that I just put these on hand tight. Found out in the past it's a lot better just to put them on hand tight. And before I get too excited, what I want to do is open this up, see if I can get a hold of the connector and remove it easy enough. So there it is, tucked out of the way. So I can just pull this out, uncoil it, and voila, hook a jumper cable up there, and we'll be back in business in short order. So when I go to put this back away, I'll just recoil it back in there. We'll be good to go. Tuck it in there out of the way of the switch there. That lays in there nicely. Lots of room. There's no place for that to fall out underneath or anything like that. So really happy with that deal. Check voltage on this. I should be able to have voltage with the switch on or off. Okay, so we got good voltage. Lay that down the bottom there. Switch the switch on. Yeah, I heard a couple of things wake up in there. Well, Cody agrees. I think he pictures that as a success. I don't know if I might give you guys some ideas to do to some of your equipment. Might make it a little easier to get yourself a jump start in the event your battery goes dead. Anyway, thanks for stopping by. Take care and God bless.